Did it go quiet for everyone else?
It did.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You had something really important there at the end, Shelly, that you were wanting to say. So I'm going to start by, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Straight Up Positive. But you had something there at the end that you wanted to share.
Yes, I did. It's, hey, happy March 1st. And since it's the 1st of March, we have a new sponsor for all of our free events this month. And it happens to be Tover, who is a wonderful company out of the Netherlands that likes to play purposefully.
Yeah, they have a really cool piece of equipment that we've actually had a chance, some of us, to play with.
Yeah, so maybe later in the month at some of our other sessions, we might get them on for a demonstration. But I will put into the comments the web address so people can go check them out if they want to after the show, not before or not during.
Not now while we're talking.
Right.
But after the show. But you know what? I actually can't get past it because I'm having a hard time sequencing and moving on, because Beth piqued my curiosity. You said stuff to play with. Can you tell me more about that? Because now I'm curious. I can't move on. I can't terminate and move on.
It was really curious. The piece of equipment that we played with was actually like a projector, and they had it mounted up high so it's shown down on the table. And as the projections moved, like it was suddenly the whole thing became a fishbowl, and you put your hands there and the fish moved in reaction to your hands, and the flowers would spin with the reaction to your hands. But it wasn't freaky. It wasn't weird. It felt safe, if I can, because that description isn't fair, because we know sometimes in dementia, my brain's going to play with me. And if it doesn't look real, then it can be really weird really fast. And it wasn't. It was really fun. And they had tons of videos of people interacting with it. It was just neat.
Cool. Yeah, definitely I'm going to have to check that out. And I thank you for addressing my unmet need of not being able to move on and take the next step in the sequence. So I'm curious, because for me, what happened when Beth said play, I said it piqued my curiosity, but it also hit a what's that part of the brain that we say is that fight, flight, fright part? What part of the brain are we talking about?
Amygdala?
Yeah. So my amygdala went, play. Because when I hear the word play, sometimes I think about like my little nieces or like my dog. And so it kind of hit a little bit of an amygdala thing. And so it's kind of, I'm glad you said that actually, Beth, because this is what we're going to talk about tonight, which is language. And I mean, Straight Up Positive is all about shining a light on our certified community. And tonight we're doing that more from a big picture macro level. One of the things that our certified community folks do is really work on this language change. And so all of us have those words that make our amygdala go, ooh. So I'm curious, does anyone have a word that you're thinking of right now when I'm saying that? And so maybe I should ask it a little bit more centered to when you're thinking about brain change. Let's narrow it in, because there's a lot of words that make all of our brains go, whoa. But what about when we're thinking about brain change?
Yeah, that actually, you could almost hear it in my voice, the way I spoke about the interactiveness of the video projections. There was almost I realized I was doing an apology in my face. And I think the sponsor does it well. They talk about play with purpose. We all need as humans to play and have moments of joy, but we know that play is different for adults. So I kind of we played with it. It was almost like an apologetic sort of face, because you're right. I have an amygdala response to putting childish terms on full-fledged adults. But a lot of times, if they have dementia, then I get to presume a childlike aspect, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. And so a lot of times we have those responses when we hear childish terms. Yeah. Anyone else have an example of a word that Because I know we all have those trigger words that make us go diamond when you're thinking about language.
So for me, one of the trigger words or phrases that just makes my fight response want to come out is when someone says somebody is suffering from this catastrophic disease, for example.
Yeah.
Like painting the picture as the most horrible thing that could ever happen in every case, right? Just labeling dementia with those words.
So that suffering word is a trigger word. Like, it doesn't have to be. And that's what's so wonderful about positive approach to care is, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is seeing blessings, seeing positive, seeing joy, seeing satisfaction, seeing different descriptors. And even when we hear someone suffering with, Oh, okay. Anybody else before we get to the biggie that we're going to talk about tonight? Because we got a biggie one.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, Margaret just told us on Facebook that she's the same way with the word suffering. Yeah, so.
Nice one, Carolyn. You hit a nerve there with our friend watching. You said Margaret?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for watching, Margaret. All right. So we're going to focus in on how our community feels part of our mission, part of our charge, if you will, is thinking about language change. And so we'd love to hear from certified folks or non-certified folks that are with us tonight. And maybe you have some ideas that you want to share with us, or maybe we have an idea that you hear that you want to say, that was great, thanks. We love your feedback and comments. But Beth, tell us about your role and why you got the particular question that we're going to ask you about. But you had a question come up recently from a certified community member who wanted to know about these caregiver burden scales that we see floating around. So why did you get that question, and how'd you address it?
Why did I have my amygdala response? So and it's funny, I didn't have my amygdala response immediately. So it was a bit of a turn. So we talked about these words that are trigger words, or, I mean, the really old fashioned one is when everyone, demented. I mean, those are words that have like a visceral response for many of us, regardless of whether you're PAC certified or not. That one is just like, it's an awful thing to call somebody. But then there's also words that we know are pervasive in science. They're words that are used, and there's this sort of like this club mentality that if you say things in a certain way, you must be deemed as in the know, and therefore you are in the club. So I think that, I imagine this happens in a lot of professions. And in academic medicine, the idea that I'm going to carefully, but give an excuse that it's under the guise of science somehow seems to make it okay to take what the rest of the field, including a lot of medical researchers, know. I'll throw one out there: behaviors. Not about you, but that word drives me crazy, because if I stop behaving, I mean, I'm either going to behave or I'm going to not be alive. So we all have behaviors, and I hope I have behaviors. But the expectation is that we're going to talk about this as behavioral manifestations of the disease, and that somehow makes it okay. But yet at the same time, these same learned clinicians and these same providers and these same academic researchers will then talk about the fact that we recognize it's not actually symptoms of a disease, much less 100+ diseases, but rather behaviors are actually our misinterpretation. It's our mistake. They're expressions of unmet need, and it's a clue that we got to figure it out. If I'm thinking that someone is doing something. So this idea of language, that's what really, I think, comes down to the trigger. Is it really the word that bothers us, or the result in what happens as a result of these words? So in my role in PAC, my job is a lot of times to translate or help people identify research articles, words that they can look up. And so I'm constantly living in two different worlds. Words that I feel are 20 years behind person-centered, much less relationship-based approaches. And it's going to take a lot of work to shove that other side with all that negative language, burden, sufferers, behavioral manifestations of the disease. But I do think it starts with us.
So you've got as many of us do, kind of a foot in multiple worlds where we're trying to make change here, yet knowing that most of the world isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, spot on.
So this question came up about these scales. And so tell us about that and how you see in research this particular word, the B word that we're going to talk about, how you see that used.
Well, I'll put it out there. It's a nasty word. Burden. I think of that word in terms of its impact, and the measure is caregiver burden. And it's a standard scale. It's a standard thing we have examined in science for so long. Automatically, though, it just fills me with just this heartbreaking feel to think how that word burden, the implication is if the caregiver has burden, who's the cause? Well, it must be, okay, I'll be honest, it must be the sufferer of dementia. And again, I would never feel comfortable exploring scientifically, clinically, or personally with a friend using those words. And so I just wonder if they're really helping us in science. And so that's where this conversation sort of came up. If we are continuing to, as my husband says, and he does measurements in business and industry, and one of the things that we learned long ago in graduate school was, measure what you want to see happening. Because otherwise you're going to do really weird twists and turns and plays with the data to figure out you've spent all this time measuring what you don't want. So where's our caregiver joy? Where's our caregiver connections? Where's our caregiver satisfaction? And are we really losing anything at all, but maybe just gaining if we start to have these words, as Joanna said, steer us and help us find another way to look at things differently, not with delusions, but truly look for what we want to measure. And that's little moments.
So wow, it looks like we've already got a lot of friends on the screen that want to talk. And I want to, Joanna, if those of you that know Joanna, if you've ever been on a Zoom with Joanna, she is like the queen of chat. And she just dropped like some serious, wisdom there, philosophy going on in Joanna's brain tonight. And she dropped it in the chat, but the rest of you didn't get to see it. So Joanna, I'm wondering if you would want to talk about what you just shared with us in the chat.
Yes, let me read it. Here's where I was going with that. It reminded me of, when we were kids, or, you have little kids and your kid falls down and, scrapes his knee and it's bleeding, and he's looking to mom or dad to see, should I throw a total hissy fit? Is this a big deal? And depending on how, I had one parent that did the, this is a 911 moment. Anytime, you're going to fall and skin your knee. And I had another parent that was like, rub some dirt on it, you're fine. So this reminds me of that, steering us with this expectation with how we, I apologize, I'm trying to make my words make sense. If we're calling something a burden, are we creating the burden?
Yeah, so
okay.
Just because I think it's worth repeating for those who didn't get to read it. I want to just read your words. You said certain words steer, in quotes, steer us. And if we're not careful, we can make something that is neutral or positive turn negative and problematic.
Right. So using that, you know, I don't like to hear the word burden. I don't connect with that. I don't think my care partner connects with that. Although everyone on the planet has moments where they feel burdened in life. So I think that it's just, it's a terrible generality to have that be a term that is just so commonly used, caregiver burden, because it sets us up for being burdened. It sets people up to feel burdened, whether they felt that or not. It gives them that platform. It gives them, it almost crams it down their throat. If you weren't burdened, let's call you caregiver burdened. And now, you know, you feel burdened yet. I mean, I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm not trying to hurt feelings. I'm just saying language is powerful, and we need to be you know, looking at this from a point of we don't need to be using language that's actually going to take us in an area that we didn't need to go, that we weren't starting from. So, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Joanna, you just made me think of something. Like, I'm really keying into what you said about, so we hand someone who is caring for a loved one with brain change, we hand them this assessment that says caregiver burden, and they've never even thought about the word burden. And suddenly they see this and they go, oh,
I should feel burdened, right? I should now I need to go into that mindset, right? I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Interrupt away. But so it's like the social worker, because I would do that in a capacity as a social worker. So now I'm thinking of the hundreds of families that I've handed a form like that to, and what they might be thinking is, oh, so this social worker is wanting to address my burden or grief when maybe they haven't put those words on it. So maybe the more general, like, PAC question would be, how would you describe your care partnering versus handing this assessment? You know,
it's like, yeah, when they gave you that depression, that Beth knows this, you know, that your depression scale or whatever the hell it's called. I'm sorry, I can't remember it. I should remember it, but I don't. And it's like, well, why are you giving this to me? I'm not depressed. Well, you just, you know, is this somewhat like you? Is this mostly like you? I'm like, I don't even understand why you're giving this to me. I'm not depressed. Take this thing and shove it. So yeah, I think we need to really, I'm sorry, this is live, isn't it? Hi guys.
Everybody write in the comments how happy you are that Joanna just said, take this piece of paper and shove it, because I know that just made me so happy. Talking about joy and satisfaction, that just gave me joy and satisfaction. But Carolyn, it looked like you had something that you were unmuting for a minute ago to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of add to the conversation on this language and how we ask people, how we frame it. And, you know, Beth and I, you know, I don't know if you recall this conversation, Beth, but it wasn't too long ago when we were talking about trying to get a program determined as, what's the right language? I can't think of the term, but it's when the local area agencies on aging have to have programs that are evidence-based.
Evidence-based.
And kind of thinking through questions. And one of the topics you mentioned was that they look for things like reduction of caregiver burden, right? And so when I think about that and I think about questions, I mean, so, okay, how did this reduce your caregiver burden is one way to ask that question. Not our way. Or why wouldn't we just say, how did this experience or how did this course or whatever improve your care partnering experience, you know, versus stating the negative. And I think there's so many ways and so many words that we use, you know, when it comes to talking about this set of diseases that could so easily be reframed, in a way that doesn't lead to that steering, like Joanna is saying, because I totally get that and can see how that would be.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, Dagne said that labeling should not happen, and I'm like, it's just that puts it really easily. That's exactly what we're saying. When we put a label on something, it changes how we look at it, or a person, or whatever. And I think that's part of the language piece too.
So it's fair for all of us to kind of have this passion and this primal response of just and for anybody that hasn't seen Straight Up Positive or seen Joanna here with us previously, you might not know why Joanna's response is a bit different from the rest of us who might be having that emotion. But I'm wondering, Joanna, if you can tell our viewers why I said that your response, your reaction might be a bit different, and then can you tell us your response when you hear the word burden?
Okay, I got the can you tell us the response when you hear the word burden? I think that's all I retained from that.
So tell us, Joanna, are you living with some form of brain change?
I'm living with Alzheimer's disease.
Okay. And so I'm curious as far as your response living with the diagnosis of that, and because it's unique, like I get irritated and, my fight flight response. I think Shelly or Carolyn said the fight. We all have our go-to amygdala responses, but I'm curious for you, yes, what that feels like living with brain change.
When I hear the word burden, well, it feels like it's just not an appropriate word for what is going on in my life and in my family. And I'm not saying that this word doesn't have a place and that people don't feel this. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that it's just not, it's not a good general term to use, because I've been out, let's say I was diagnosed in 2016. So I've kind of been wearing this new, brain for a while. And I know that, life isn't perfect for any of us, but I don't think that my husband, who's my care partner, would say that this is caregiver burden. I don't know if he would ever say that. I don't think that he feels that. And I think when I hear that word, I feel a little defensive, but I also feel heavy. Like when we were kind of talking a little bit last night to get ready for tonight. And I've been talking with Beth for a while now, the past year, and we have a good rapport. And to hear her say that word, it was like, it didn't matter that it came from somebody I love and respect. It was like, ew, not the B word. And it was a really strange moment for me, because I thought, I think this is a slippery type of subject, because how do we discuss this and still be sensitive to those people who we know that they're really have a stressful care partner relationship. We know that exists, and we're not discounting that. But we also know that it doesn't exist in certain certain partnerships. And we know that for the most part, even if it does exist, it's not a 24/7. So I guess I think I might be kind of going off the rails over here, but I was surprised that I had kind of a visceral response to that.
I think we all do, and it's what you started with, Joanna. I think so beautiful, as you're saying, Beth and I have established this relationship, this friendship, And to hear someone that I respect, that was even a different element. And, sometimes I say to care partners, like, caregiving doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's so many other pieces that play into your emotional response. So oftentimes I'll say, describe being a care partner in 3 words. And gosh, I mean, we could do a whole research study, Beth, on the responses that come out of that question, because they're so all over the board. And, it really does warm my heart when I hear words like gratifying, rewarding. And I don't think we see that side of it in the literature or in, in these types of scales. And Carolyn also shares a unique perspective. And thank you, Carolyn, for being here tonight. After just going through running some races this weekend, and you just need a break, and yet you're here with us, so thank you. But tell us about your perspective, because you have a different perspective than Beth and Shelly and Joanna and I, and where you find yourself currently with your mom.
Sure. So I have been a care partner for my mom now for, I would say, probably 5 years. And I chose to move up to be with her. I live in Florida. She lives in Rhode Island. I have a family in Florida, and I have a mom and siblings in Rhode Island. But the type of work I do made it easy for me to be able to move up and support her. And when I moved in with her, she was very early on in her dementia experience. And as time went on, things changed, of course. And, so there were times when it was really hard. As I think we all can recognize that sometimes it's hard. Lots of things in life are hard. And there were sacrifices that I made that I did so by choice, because I knew I would get to spend some really awesome time with my mom as things changed, and I could be helpful as time went on and help navigate what could be some very difficult decisions, which then did end up happening, actually. I mean, long story short, my mom is now in a memory care community up in Rhode Island, and I'm back in Florida most of the time. I'm up there in Rhode Island a month that I try to spend as much time as I can with her. And things have turned out really well because we did our homework, But at the end of the day, while I am, happy as to how things have turned out, there are times when, of course, I feel guilty. Like, why couldn't I have helped support her at home forever? And there are times when I felt like, but I do have another life that I'm totally ignoring right now while I'm supporting my mom up here. And so just lots of mixed emotions. But for me, when I think that when I look back on things and I think about language, I think about the words I chose to use very carefully with her and with my siblings, who I have 4 siblings, and we are all on different pages at any given point in time about this topic of our mom and dementia. And by the way, my dad had dementia as well. My mom and our family cared for him in our home until he died. So it wasn't a new thing for us. But anyway, I have tried to model the language like we're talking about. But I will tell you, it's a kind of a constant. It's something that, even with, repeating myself and trying to use the right terminology, even sometimes when I don't feel like it, when I do feel overwhelmed, really calling to mind the right way to portray things and say things. I think it's super important. So
I think one of the things, though, Carolyn, that someone said beforehand is that thought like drives, or our words drive our thoughts and our feelings. And I think one of the things that I've admired about you, just working with you and PAC for the past 5 years, is that you and your mom, I mean, I know there's hard times. And as Joanna said, all of us have burden. Like, okay, so we're not going to throw away the word from the dictionary because burden existed. It's just the context of what we're saying that we might appreciate a different usage, but we all have burdens. We all have hard days. We all, that have experiences that we wish didn't go the way we wanted it to. But I think that the attitude and the positive approach to care that you brought to supporting your mother, you guys have had some really cool experiences that we've all gotten to see. And I'm sure if we've seen 5, there's probably 105 that we haven't seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my goal was always to make it fun where I could. And my mom was and is still a very good sport. So I didn't have to use too many positive action starters with her because you know what? She was willing to do pretty much whatever I could dream of. So we have all kinds of videos. You're right. I probably have 200 videos and pictures of the time we were together and the things that we were doing. And, it kind of reminds me, is it okay if I talk about the donut here?
Please do.
Yeah, so Tifa uses this metaphor often, and I have absolutely kind of followed her lead, that we use the metaphor of a donut. And so I would ask you, when you look, did you see a picture of a donut? What do you focus on? So what do you guys focus on? When you see a donut, picture that donut with the pink frosting and the sprinkles and what a donut typically looks like.
Yeah.
Not a bear claw, Joanna. Traditional donut.
The traditional round donut.
I
am all about the coating and the balance between that and the bread part, and how soaked it is in beautiful, wonderful grease, or worse yet, coconut oil. Or
so yeah, that cakiness, and maybe it's the frosting, and maybe it's the sprinkles. And I've even been to donut shops where they put bacon and maple syrup and all stuff. So the donut, right? But what's in the middle of most donuts? The hole, right? So where do we focus? The donut, yeah, the jelly. Unfortunately, jelly donuts don't usually have a hole, so it doesn't make for the metaphor that I'm trying to do. But someone always says that, Joanna. What about a jelly donut? So we focus on the donut. We don't focus on the hole. So when we think about dementia, somebody living with dementia, somebody living with brain change, what do we want to focus on? We want to focus on what's there, not on what's not there. And, I think that's always stuck with me. And so I would spend, a lot of my thinking time really trying to figure out, how do I take what my mom has, and her abilities are pretty strong for a long time, and they still are in different ways. How do I take what she can do and really leverage that and make it so that she has fun and we have a good day? And that's what I did. So, and it was just a powerful, great experience, quite honestly.
And Carolyn, I think that it's also kind of a ripple effect of the way that you approach it then impacts her, which then impacts your response to her again. And there's these ripples. And so I'm not being clear with my words either, Joanna, but you gave me a story, and I'm wondering if you'd share that, because I think you told a story about your mom having a bit of confusion about where she is now in a positive way. But even with that, I'm wondering if after you share that, we could role play that out a little bit and see then how that goes based on different reactions. So can you just tell us about where your mom thinks she is now?
Yeah. So my mom lives in a small memory care community, and she thinks she's home. So she truly thinks she's home. And it looks nothing like her home. So for those of you who are thinking, oh, we can't move because my mom's lived in the same place for 60 years, she'll never acclimate. My mom lived in her house for 60 years, and she literally thinks she's home. So when we go to visit, and we, the four of the five of us live, well, when I'm up there, I'm around, and then three of the others are fairly local. So we visit quite a bit. And so we go, and she's out in the community room, hanging with folks. And because of COVID, we're not supposed to go in, we're not supposed to be in the community room part because of COVID. We're supposed to visit in the rooms, that's it. So we go, we try to get her to come into the room, to her room. And of course, she doesn't want to go because she's having a good time with her guests. So I use the positive action starter of food. I always bring a little food with me and I say, hey, mom, I have something for us to eat, but I didn't bring enough for everybody. So let's go in your room and eat it. So she comes right away, right? But the moment, usually, that she's done eating, she's like, well, gotta go. Like, gotta go. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have guests out there that I need to be, giving attention to, and sorry. Like, okay then.
So, and there was one time that you said that she actually was concerned about how she was going to provide food for all the people.
Yeah. So we were talking about the holidays coming up. And she said when I came to visit, she got me aside and said, I don't know what we're going to do about feeding all these people for, I think it was Christmas. I don't know what we're going to do. And I went, wow, Mom, that's a good question. We're going to have to figure that out. She's like,
so I'm going to pause you right there because you're giving away the answer. But I want to do what 95% of most care partners, how are most care partners going to respond to that? Listen, Mom, this is not your home. Listen, you live here now, and you don't have to be responsible for all this. Joanna's given a hand signal. I'm curious about that. And so what's going to happen in response to that feedback?
So if I told her that that this was not her home, she's just staying there, she would either, I think, try and get an argument with me. And the funny thing is, I've never done that to her, so I don't really know what she said, but I'm just thinking she would get angry with me and say, what are you saying? This is my home and they're my guests. That's what I think she would probably say.
So then what would that do if we play this out a little bit more? What then would that do to your caregiver experience if we're not using the B word?
Yeah, so it probably would not result in a very good overall visit because I would get her started on this negative trend and on this negative conversation. And then I'd have to think about how do I rescue that? How do I turn it around? And when she gets angry, she'll just leave. She may even just say, I'm out of here, or go away, or I don't want to see you.
Right. And Carolyn, what I was thinking is that would be for some care partners, that would be, well, I'm not coming back.
Right.
I've had it. That's it. I can't, because, and yet I was the one who caused the problem by reacting and was saying the things that I said. So whose problem is it? Of course, it's mine, right?
Right.
But I think that that's often what happens, right? With a lot of folks that we work with and talk to.
It
Yeah.
is. Yep.
Go for it, Joanna. It looks like you might have wanted to say something there. And
I was trying to make the hand wave, but I guess it doesn't have that button. I just really appreciate Carolyn sharing so much about her personal life with us, and it just makes me feel think about my previous life of working from what do I want the end result to be, and then working backwards. So what I want this to look like finally, and then back it up to now, what are the things I need to do and say to make that happen? And that can be hard to do. It can be impossible to do at times, but it's kind of a neat process, because a lot of times we wouldn't do and say some of the things that we do and say, because we know that wouldn't end us where we want to go. And I had another aha moment, and now I can't think of what the word was, but yeah, okay, now I remember it. I hear a lot from people that this truth telling that we have going on in society. We promise to be honest with each other, right? I promise never to lie to you, Mom, Dad. I promise to always tell you the truth, and to I mean, that's like a high standard as us, as we humans. See, my English is great. And I was talking to some folks about this today. I said, we make that contract all the time with different relationships. I make it with my spouse, when we got married, and we make that in that contract in life. But you make it with a person who does not have dementia in their brain. And so when we made that contract, right, I promised to always be honest and never to lie to you. And that's great. And I love that. And I promise that too. But now I have a different brain. So you made that promise to a different brain. Now I need you to make that promise to my heart, that you will promise to not do and say things that are going to devastate me. Sorry. And it doesn't matter if it's the truth. It doesn't matter if it's a lie, because all I care about is how you make me feel and how I feel with you. So we need to take that contract and we need to rework it, because that was the part of me that didn't have a damaged brain. Now you need to take care of my heart. It's a whole new contract. So I guess what I'm trying to say without melting down is, please don't feel upset about lying in this new relationship with your care partner. If that's someone you're taking care of, please don't feel that way. Okay. Because this is so much more than that. And that's what I was trying to say. I don't know if I said it, but I meant to say it.
Beautifully, Joanna, as always. And so I'm curious if you had a specific, I got just caught up in the emotion for a second, but I'm curious if you had like an example of situation where you've heard folks do this whole truth, nothing but the truth, where maybe that contract should have gotten thrown up, like wadded up and thrown in the trash can. Any examples that come to mind for you?
I luckily haven't had too many personal ones. We did a discussion on grief and loss recently with another organization, and even though that's not my happy place, it was a necessary discussion. And I think not having human children, my dogs are my kids. So I lost my first dog 3 years ago to cancer, and and I've been living with Alzheimer's for 6 years now. So I know I was kind of, used to acclimated to some degree to this new brain. And I was not necessarily remembering that my dog had passed. I mean, months down the road, I knew that the house felt different. And to be reminded of someone's or something that has died is actually re-traumatizing. It's not helping me be in reality. It's not recentering me. It's not doing anything but trying to force me into your reality. I mean, you as a general. And I think that was a real turning point when we had that discussion, because none of us want to be re-traumatized. And then I'm not going to remember. And this actually did happen with a family member, not my husband, but I said, I'm looking for my dog. I haven't seen her in a while, and it's time to feed her. And it was like, honey, you had to put her down. I mean, she's been gone for a year. And it was like, okay, I didn't really understand it, because I still had all the dog stuff, because I have 2 other dogs. I was like, it was, let me get there. Don't re-traumatize me. And if I ask that question again, I mean, just let me get there. It was just a real strange experience to have. I think that that type of truth telling is just absolute garbage. I mean, again, I'm not going to say lose our minds, but I'm not working head first anymore. I'm working heart first. So I need whatever relationship I have to be heart first. I need to be connecting that way. I don't need to be forced into someone else's reality, which may be everyone's reality. The dog's dead. The dog's been dead for 3 years. You let me get there on my own. And if that makes sense.
Beautifully. And I think, Joanna, but yes, and I'm curious if you're bringing such an important piece to light, which is that you might not have been okay with that 10 years ago. Like you might have wanted a different thing from people in your life than what you want now. Is that a fair assessment?
As far as them being honest and factual, yeah, because I had a real logic-based job, and that was something that I kind of was secure in, facts and black and white. And I would have been a really good accountant. I always thought, I would have been really great at that detail stuff. And now things can't be that way. It's almost impossible to describe. And the best way I can say it is that I'm oftentimes not even going to remember some of the conversation that we had yesterday. And if it was negative, that's a good thing. And I don't need it to be brought up again. If it was positive, then yeah, we can revisit that. Maybe we can have that same conversation every day for the rest of my life. But I don't need to be re-traumatized and reminded that I had to put my dog down, and that I did something bad, or I said something bad, or we don't need to do that to say, we're keeping our promise that we would never lie to you. It's like, well, we'll break that promise because it's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything to me, and I'm half the contract. So the contract's null and void.
Yeah. Amen. It's this idea of figuring out in a relationship, person to person, what I need. And I think the only way I think people can really understand this idea, this dichotomy, this juggle between the whole truth versus I'm never going to lie to you, friend, because we have a place of trust, but doesn't mean I have to shove the truth down your throat. And it's a hard concept, because we hear this concept all the time. And yet I think if anybody has achieved a certain age in their life, even with no brain change in the picture, we have all experienced this. And this is where, let's say you lose a loved one. And my sister and I now have this little bit of a joke where after a death in the family, someone comes up to you and you could have been laughing at the last moment ago, having a great conversation, something is really funny, you're at a great place, and someone comes up and they say, oh, how are things? And you're like, oh, Christ, excuse my French. It's an amygdala response. It's truly that moment's like, okay, shoot. Am I in a good enough place to help support their grief in supporting my grief? And so my sister and I will do these things where we'll go, severe head tilt. How are you? And our response, the appropriate social response is, things are going okay. Because I know that's what you need to hear right now. And it's not truly in concert with me. It's not actually coming up and saying, hey, Joanna, matching how your face is. I'm really questioning because you seem pretty good. How's it going today? Is it crazy? Is it pretty good day? It's one of those days. Wow. And is that a new thing just today?
Yeah, just kind of right before we came on, about a half hour before we came on, and it was like
oh, perfect timing. And so knowing that with someone, how might I be able to switch that moment of truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth to, wow. So, and if you are looking at the dog dish and wondering if you fed the dog, and I know exactly who you're referring to, I can say, oh, wow, you're looking for, your dog's name was, it's your dog you've had for a long time.
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years. That's a long, that's a strong dog. So yeah. My dog's name is was Stanley. And your dog's name is?
Well, the one that died. Her name was Pippi Longstocking.
Her name was Pippi Longstocking. And so as much as I want to sit here and support my friend, I got to pause and say, do we now know where Joanna is in her understanding of her dog? And it's like, did I do it perfectly? No, I changed the present tense and past tense a couple of times. So we don't have to be perfect in this. I don't know if folks have had that sort of experience before, where rather than, I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to check in first and see where you are, where your reality is. Is that realistic, I guess, Joanna and Carolyn,
To check in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I'm matching, taking the pulse of the environment. I think that makes sense. I'm sorry. When I think about my dog, I start to get sad, and we're not talking about that, so I need to not think about that.
Go back to bear claws and donuts.
Thanks a lot, Beth.
I'm right there with you, Joanna. I'm thinking about my lost dog. So we'll talk after the show about that.
I mean, it's that language thing, but I think we started out talking about burden, and it's like, I don't even have, when I had a visceral response. It wasn't a hurt feeling. It was like ew, I can't believe such a terrible word is being spoken. And I know Beth didn't mean anything by it. It's just, that's the word that's out there. That's what we have to choose from. And I just thought that was an odd thing. And I don't think I'm alone in that, and thinking this is not a good word for us to be using. There's a place for it, but this isn't the place. So, okay, yes, let's talk about pancakes. It's Mardi Gras.
So, I thought I'd just add in real quick that for those of you who don't know me, I'm the one who answers the consults, right, on when somebody writes in. And I will tell you that one of the most frequent topics that we talk about, that people write in about, are what to tell somebody when somebody has died, or whether, or something else, when to tell somebody about moving, and how much advance notice do you give? And, and I know it's maybe not the specific words we're talking about with language, but just kind of the whole philosophy of how much do you tell? And, it's different for different people. But I would say to you this, I think one of the bigger challenges I encounter with consults is people who will say, just like Joanna said, my wife and I, my husband and I, my mom and I, we always agreed that we would never lie to each other. And I'm not going to start that now. And what I would, as I kind of work towards how do we maybe shift some thinking a little bit, I often say, well, so let's think about what's the value of sharing the whole truth and nothing but the truth in this situation. What do you think what do you think the response is going to be? And then how might we share something that maybe is related, but maybe not quite in that as direct way as you're thinking you need to? And what about the timing? I mean, what timing makes the most sense? And then lastly, I would say, when someone will say to me, well, she needs closure, I need to tell her that because she needs closure. And my response to that is often, so you're thinking she needs closure. I'm wondering who else might need closure. I mean, whose closure are we talking about here? Because oftentimes that is what's going on, is the care partner is the one that needs the closure. The person living with dementia, they've had the closure. So anyway, I just thought that might lend some more material to that conversation.
Thank you, Carolyn. And man, I know Shelly is really our very time-oriented friend, is going, you guys, we have been on for 58 minutes. And Shelly, I'm wondering if you've noticed how skilled Beth and Carolyn and Joanna are.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what I was thinking was, what is so cool is that there's some really amazing opportunities for folks if they want to learn about this themselves. So that's
what I was thinking.
Yeah, so let me share my screen here a second and tell you a little bit about what we have coming up. So just as a reminder, that today was brought to us by Positive Approach to Care and Tover. But, TIPA answers questions like this all the time. And this time, actually tomorrow night at this time, is Ask TIPA Anything back here on Facebook. So come back and join, and who knows what questions will be brought up then, but you'll actually see some more of these techniques practiced there. And then for our certified community, this Friday at 1:00, we have our open door session where we all get, those of us who've been through some of these certifications, get to try these things out with other people and bring up some more of these questions. But what I'm really excited about, actually, the 18th is another opportunity where Alejandra's going to lead a session about how do you set up a website and promote your training or your certification from Positive Approach so that you can help people learn the language and change and learn and move with the language. But what's really cool is we're coming back together live with TIPA in person to do certifications here coming up at the end of March. So I kind of love this little thing. You can choose your own adventure. We have 3 certifications going on over 2 days. And we also have some master classes. So you get to choose choose which one that you want to try and where would you like to work and practice these skills that we talked about, and practice with Tipa and with some of us. I'm pretty sure Beth is going to be there, and maybe Rebekah or somebody else. We'll see. But wanted to give you guys that opportunity. And then as the way for me to end my part is I want to thank everybody who's listening and watching, and the fact that you continue to like us and share and follow us both on Facebook and on YouTube. Consider subscribing to our channel so that you can learn even more of these things as we go throughout. So my time, I did pretty well.
Wow, Shelly, you wrapped what you would ask for, like, I think 10 minutes into like 4. So hats off to Shelly for that one. Well done. Thank you. Yeah, because some people might be watching and going, how did they do that? How did they come up? How did they respond that way? And so I think that's really important to point out. This has taken years of practice and experience and seeing other ways of doing things. And so if you want to learn some of these approaches, please come learn with us. PAC has lots of opportunities to do that. And I'm going to give a challenge. Yes.
I just wanted to say, I couldn't watch all the comments that were going while I was showing that. So Kathleen asked the question about how about when your loved one asks the same question over and over again. I was going to say, we have videos on YouTube on just that topic, or connect with us at consult@tipasnow.com. And you may talk to Catherine, or you may talk to Carolyn, or you may talk to Rebekah or somebody else.
Fantastic. Yes, we don't want to leave that question hanging. Please feel free to reach out to us. We can get you to product or a 30-minute free consultation. I'm going to put out a challenge, just like I'm throwing it out there, because so many times on Straight Up Positive, we find these certified community folks that have been doing this for 2 or 3 years, and we get to hear about what they've been doing for the past 2 or 3 years since they became PAC certified. Next month, I'm having some freshly certified folks on, because I thought it would be helpful to hear from we just got certified, and they're already making such changes in their practice. So we're going to do a little bit different next month, and it's going to be a couple of folks who I got to mentor from end of the year certification. So they just wrapped it up and they're freshly certified. But my challenge is this: if you are watching tonight and you are at those in-person certs that are going to be right before we meet again on April 5th, we may bring you on so that you can share about what the cert was like. So there's my challenge. If you go through one of our upcoming certs in the next month, reach out to us. Reach out to RebekahW@tipasnow.com. I'd love to hear your perspective too about, I just did it and here's what it was like. And so you can share with other folks about that learning experience. So a couple of challenges. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Shelly. You all are amazing. And to think, this just came together.
Last plug to Tober. Thank you for sponsoring us.
Thank you, Tober.
For free.
Awesome. See you next month. Stay positive.